So another YouTuber dropped a discussion video that I thought was a fantastic conversation piece, and I wanted to do a video response to that. So let's get into it. And for more comics content, head over to genoscomics.wordpress.com. All right, before we get into it, I just want to shout out to Reaper Tate 728 for his video that he dropped the other day. It was on comic book and comic book regrets. Now, specifically, it was more about individual comic books maybe you regretted not picking up. But so I do have an example of that, and then I have a larger example of that. But again, shout out to Reaper Tate for that. So just the idea of regrets and comic book collecting, and I think we all have faced that dilemma at least at some point, but it probably just the severity of it and maybe what your definition of regret. Some people might not like that because, especially just comic books, they are just a hobby, just a fun hobby. But yeah, I can see how some people might actually have regrets of, especially people when you get into the business side of it. Like then it can be, the cost of that can be more severe than just people kind of doing it more casually and just purely for fun. But so I do have two examples. One, a recent one actually, which is kind of fits how it's kind of perfect for how timely this was. And then one, a larger scale, more like hobby wide kind of situation that I've kind of touched on in other videos, and I just wasn't gonna delve too deep into it until later on. But since Reaper dropped this video, I figured, oh, what the hell, we'll go into it now. So specifically for a specific book example, again, I won't get into specifics of it because it relates to a book that I already have. I haven't shown off yet, and have several videos on queue, but I'm rolling them out in a specific order. Trust me, there's a method to my madness. You just have to wait and hold on, and you won't regret it, I promise you. But it was a book I had an opportunity to pick up a copy of online anyway on eBay. I was watching it, and it was just another copy of it, but I already had it, so I just kind of let it go. But for the price of it, I probably could have just did it anyway, and I could have moved it later on and got profit out of it, or use it as trade bait for another book, for a bigger book. But at the time I was like, I didn't really need it. So I just kind of let it go, and then I kind of looked back at it to see what it finished at, and only one person bid on it. I was like, I could have just did that. It would have, and I could have sat on it. It would have been fine. It wouldn't have been that much of a hit, and I could have moved it at any point later on, and could have easily just made a profit on it. But it was just kind of one of those things where I just kind of weighed on it back and forth, like, I don't know. But yeah, so that was just a smaller example, and I'm sure a lot of comic book collectors have faced that dilemma at some point, if not multiple times throughout their collecting lifespan. So that's just one. Now for the bigger example, which is more not just related to a specific individual book, but just hobby wide, is I wish I had gotten into getting into bigger books sooner. And I mean years ago. I think that would have benefited myself, my future wallet, future bank account, and my collection. Because even just years ago, I was always just about collecting, especially younger. Just, you don't have much money, just can go and pick up some books. You got a couple of dollars, try to maximize those bucks. When I was going to conventions, those first couple years of going to conventions, especially that first one, I was all in those 25-cent boxes, 50-cent boxes. I think there was even boxes that were like 2 for a quarter, 3 for a dollar, quarter boxes, dollar boxes, $2 boxes. I was in those deep, like coming away with just massive stacks of books, and I loved it. Just a bunch of reading material, building up my collection with cool stuff, cool, interesting stuff that I was already into, and then stuff that I just wanted to check out because it might have a cool cover, or it was related to characters, stories, or creators that I'd known about but I hadn't seen much of. So it was a great opportunity to check them out. So, but I would always hear about all these bigger books and see them at the shows, people on people's walls, in shops, all the shops I would go to, and see those, and I'm like, oh man, I can't imagine spending anything near close to that for any of those books. I'm like, cover price, yeah. Cheaper than that, yes. $5-10, maybe. But then you start getting 20, 30, well, maybe probably 20, but maybe, I don't know, probably in the $30 to $40 range was when I started. I was dipped into those for a few specific books. If I caught a deal, I think like Uncanny X-Men 266 and X-Men 98, those two books the original Volume 1 X-Men 98. Those two books at one point for several years were the most I spent on any individual books. And I got those in a package deal at the end of a convention. Like, hey, will you take this for those? And the seller said yes. Boom, I'll take them. And then just years going by, I'm still picking up cheaper books in all my favorite runs, not going anything expensive, and just slowly and sure, I'm not even really looking at them like those expensive books, even X-Men books, not even looking at the prices for those, but I'm just seeing them and not even paying like, oh man, that's a lot for those books. It's like, okay, it's kind of passing. And now the last few years, just getting into, especially with X-Men, as I kind of whittle down the books that I need to fill out that collection, starting to looking at those more expensive books and getting those early hundreds and some of those other keys, and the price is going up, and I'm finding deals, and I'm just having no problem picking those up. And I was thinking, if I started doing this years ago, X-Men, Spider-Man, Avengers, Captain America, Daredevil, especially, those are my main runs, I would have been able to pick up some of those, especially like Bronze Age keys and going into Silver Age, a lot of those books. I'd have been able to pick up a bunch of those for so much cheaper than what I'm going to be looking at paying for them in the next few years, this year even, next couple years, 10 years. Like, those prices are just going up. Some, like, they're dipping, whatever, but a lot of those bigger books, like the blue chip keys, whatever you want to call them that, like, those are just up there. And I just thinking, like, dude, like, if I would have decided, like, I'm going hard and I would have went after some of those books, I could have got them so much cheaper. And all those other books that I was using to bolster those runs and fill up those runs, I don't know why to call them filler books, because it makes them just seem like they're just not anything, like they don't mean shit if they're not a big key. But just to run those books to complete those runs, like some of the less significant ones, I don't know, it's hard to it's hard to figure out a way to phrase it without making it seem like you're just knocking those books down because they don't hold a significant value, whatever. But like, I was just worried about getting those, so I was definitely more quantity over quality in that aspect, because I'm like, all right, I only have this much. Like, I want to get as many books as I can, get as many books. So now I'm like, all right, now I'm cool with spending whatever on one specific book, and maybe even pulling back or just not spending anything else, pulling back on my pull list, my pre-order books, mycomicshop.com, even with the massive discount. Like, okay, start saving, start paring down that list, and putting more money aside for some bigger books down the line. Like, okay, now I got this ready, so when I'm ready to pull the trigger, boom, I can get this book, make a deal for this book, whatever. But if I had to say I had a comic collecting regret, it's absolutely that. Because I could just imagine what I would have acquired the last 20 years of collecting. And some of those smaller books, I would have been able to still just pick those up cheaper. I could have cut down on newer stuff and would have still been able to pick up some of those cover price or at sales. I see a lot of those books all the time. So that's just one. I was like, dude, I could have just done so much more damage, and I could just have just those bigger, fantastic books in my collection, especially X-Men stuff. Like, I could have just cleaned up with my X-Men run so much sooner, and I'm obviously getting there now. But just imagine what I could have done: X-Men, Spider-Man. And again, those my main Marvel titles, even some of the DC stuff, the Supergirl stuff, even though none of those are as expensive outside of Action 252, but everything else, we'd have them all sooner, like, no problem. And it's just kind of wild just to think about just the prices. And as I talked about speculation, and I always kind of referenced the video I dropped earlier this year, go check that out, just the cost of collecting in 2022, and all the different things that goes into just being a comic collector. And there's always a cost benefit analysis, I guess, or there's another word, like a cost, I don't know, cost opportunity, some opportunity cost. There you go. There's always an opportunity cost and everything. So you kind of take your chances. Sometimes it works out for you, sometimes it doesn't. But that's just the game. But yeah, so I just wanted to do a video response because I thought it was a cool topic, and it's something I was going to address at some point in the future in my own specific video. But since I saw that video, I was like, oh, that's a great topic. So again, shout out to Reaper Tate 728. I'll drop his video in the description. You can go check out his channel and then watch that video and drop a response if you have your own face your own comic book collecting regrets, and just kind of maybe you've kind of seen those in the process of it. They're like, oh, you know what, I might regret this, let me pull the trigger. So there's definitely had a couple of situations like that as well. And you'll see that in some of the upcoming videos I got with some books I haven't shown off yet. Again, tons of stuff to come on deck. I'm just rolling things out in a specific order just because of some things I am dropping videos in like this one. But some haul videos for some dope books that I have not shown off. Nobody has any clue about them. But you can, except for, I had dropped one on Twitter. So if you follow me on Twitter, you might have seen that. But yeah, tons of cool stuff on deck. Yeah, so I'm curious as hell to see what other people's regrets are regarding their own comic book collecting experiences and just kind of their own, what they've taken away from any regrets that you've had in the past or potentially facing any regrets. And again, go check out Reaper Tate 728's channel and definitely share your thoughts in the comments below. Happy reading, happy hunting, happy collecting. This is Geno's Comics. Thanks for watching and peace out.